Okay, Carol, I got 6:31.
Yeah, I'm just getting your live streaming up. And now you're recording, so you're all set.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and hopefully Monica will join us shortly in process. As far as a roll call, Carol, we do that, right? Or do we just, Chuck is here, Ed's here, Phil, Michael, Michelle, myself, yourself, Denise, and Tony?
Yep,
Yes, I'm here.
there we go. And Monica's signing in now.
Okay, good. So, so we have a quorum. Good. Hey, Monica.
There we go. Welcome, Monica. We just started. Oh, maybe she can't hear us.
Can you hear us, Monica? Yeah, there you are.
Hi, I'm trying to come in.
There we go. We got you.
Okay,
All right,
well,
very
welcome.
good. Thank you.
So we have the whole commission, and we have Carol and Tony and Denise. So thank you for joining us, Denise. First order of business, has everyone had a chance to review the meetings from our May 24th meeting?
I didn't get those minutes. I couldn't find them.
Yes.
I sent you an email today, Michelle.
I looked. Let me just look really quick.
You didn't get them maybe I don't have your correct email. You didn't get them last time either.
You know, do you know where you sent it to?
I think I sent it to, I think it's a Michelle Stecker at Gmail or something.
Yeah, that's me. No, it's not Michelle. It's MR Stecker. MR Stecker,
Okay,
not Michelle Stecker.
let me look and see what I sent. It goes, yeah, so I'm sorry, I have your incorrect email. It says Michelle Stecker at gmail.com.
No, it's MR Stecker altogether, all
All right.
lowercase.
Okay. Okay.
They're pretty brief. Do you want to, we'll go on to I'll just give a little brief report and maybe you can read them and then we'll circle back to whether you're okay with those minutes.
Sounds good.
Okay. So as we noted in the agenda, we reached out and invited the managers of in the town finance, public works, school, recreation functions, public works director, town moderator, and recreation committee chair, asking if anyone had revisions that we might take up at this meeting, with the exception of Denise and Tony and Carol and Bob had already submitted ones for review at the last meeting, which we were scrubbed due to a state technical issue. But I hadn't received, or we hadn't received anything other than the submission from Denise and later this afternoon from Tony. So what we do today is just take them in order. We'll ask Ed to take us through the clarifications really that Bob Mushin had set through. And Ed, I saw your note. I mean, maybe what we'll do is we'll go through them. We'll be clear. And at the next meeting in August, we're all going to be together. So if we need to sort of fine tune the language or the verbiage, it seems pretty straight to me. But if people want to be in place for a work session, maybe we could do that. Michelle, have you had a chance to take a look at those minutes?
I have them in my hand right now. Just a second. I mean, I'm sure they're fine. Yeah, yep, thank you. I got them.
Anybody else have any comments, suggestions? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Chuck. Second, anyone?
I'll second.
Okay, so moved. Thank you. Moving on.
Well, we need to either show of hands or do a roll call. We need to determine how each has voted.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand.
Okay, let the record show. Oh, Jack, you'll have to tell me your position because I can't see you.
Why is that?
I don't know. Do you not have, is your video not on?
Start video. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
Okay.
you're in favor too then. All right, so let the record show it was unanimous.
Okay. Thank you all. So this is sort of our first time going through this. So we start, Ed, with you and the submissions that Bob had put forward.
Sure, happy to. Let me share the screen here. And see if this is going to work. Share. So this is my hope was that George Crowell or someone from the budget committee would be here because all of the changes that Bob recommended, at least those that I took a look at further, fall within the budget committee. So I'm not sure whether or not the budget committee has anything to add to this. I know that George was at the last meeting, the one that was scuttled, and I hope that at some point he might appear before us to suggest any changes that he might have. I know in a quick conversation with him at the dump at one point, he at least had some basic timeline changes that he was suggesting. So that notwithstanding, and perhaps, subject to future change, this is these are the suggested changes that Bob was seeking. So I think that the first one with respect to setting compensation and salaries is pretty straightforward. I think B2, which is 502 B2, those that are in red and struck through are the what would be proposed to be deleted. Those what is in green would be proposed addition. B2, I think, is really straightforward. On first reading, it seems like it is just talking about certain position, the position of the town clerk and the treasurer tax collector. But I think reading it and thinking about it, it does two separate things. The first sentence, it allows the budget committee to be able to set the stipends for, or to suggest the stipends for the school committee and the town council, which would be the elected officials. And
I don't see the town council, the school committee mentioned on here.
Yeah, they
no, I
do.
don't, but it says recommended changes in compensation for any
Okay.
elected official of the town.
Okay, sorry.
And to the extent that it says that, I presume that in the second sentence, it's clear, it specifies that the town clerk and formerly had specified the treasurer and the tax collector. So my presumption is that the first sentence gives the budget committee the purview over stipends for the school committee and the town council. And the second, and the proposed change was that the town administrator would then suggest the compensation for the town clerk.
Well, since now as a finance director, would the town administrator also suggest compensation for the finance director?
I presume that that would be the case, but that was not discussed with Bob insofar as I.
Well, you have to keep in mind, this is for elected officials.
Thank you very much,
The
Carol.
finance director is no longer elected.
Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you.
That's
Yeah.
quite true. The second B3 is straightforward enough as well. And that, let me go back to 502 and read the full, I'm sorry, I'm toggling between screens here. And I can't get to.
I got it here if you want me to read it, Ed.
I'm looking, if you don't mind reading 502B3, I'm trying to get back
I think
to.
it's prepare a capital, or in this instance, review a capital expenditure program for the town pursuant to the provisions of section 505 of the charter, and it points to the resolution back July 20th, 00, approved at election. Blah, blah, blah. So that's in essence it. It's,
Thank you. This would bring, by removing prepare, it would bring it in line with what Bob's suggested change was to section 505, which is that the budget committee not prepare, that the budget committee merely review, I presume is what he wanted. So the language for 505 then is the next one down is complete. I think one of the way that 505 was written is a bit of a cautionary tale for us as a body, I think, because the way that 505 was initially written, the council was deficient in not following this language. I don't think that that was intentional on the council's part. I think that it had been addressed by multiple ordinances which were in place. The ordinances, by giving the council the flexibility to adopt ordinances, it removes the need to have a special election if there's a problem with the town charter, because the council on its own can go and change the ordinance. So giving the delegating that kind of responsibility to the council by ordinance, I think makes for an awful lot of administrative sense for these sorts of things. The only change was twofold. I would suggest just delete and preparation. To my mind, if this says, so the council shall provide by ordinance for the orderly review by the budget committee. And to my mind, the budget committee can only review what has been prepared. So we don't need to add in preparation or specify who it is that should prepare that. If the town council by ordinance wants to delegate that to the town administrator, that's great. If they want to delegate it to the public works department, that's fantastic too. But by ordinance, they can do that. And because most of this is already appears elsewhere in ordinances, I would just suggest that we, in the second sentence, add an S to make ordinances plural. In the first case, it's both singular and plural. In the second case, and this is where I think that the town council was deficient, it says such ordinance, which is clearly singular, and there is no one ordinance that addresses this, but it does appear in multiple sections of the town code. So I think if we just make that, if we were to make that plural, it would refer to all of those places in the town code that already address this.
Well, I think that is very straightforward, well thought through, and clear. So thank you, Ed, for doing
Again,
that.
Jack, I would like it if George Crowell and or the budget committee would weigh in on these procedural matters. I mean, from my perspective as a voter, I am somewhat troubled by appointed positions and that they are not directly responsible to the electorate. And the budget committee is directly elected at the financial town meeting. And so if the budget committee, wanted to reserve the right to be preparing the budget as they have, I would certainly take that under consideration and perhaps give it greater weight than the town council might.
Yeah, I was going to ask Carol a procedural question on this, and then certainly anybody else with questions. Carol, Ed had said he'd, after he had gone through this, he'd wished we'd had the time to share with George which I presume we do, are there any issues if we were to do that prior to, final codification of this, which can be sometime down the road?
Oh, no, there's no problem there. I mean, you certainly probably would want to share your thoughts on what you want to change in a particular section with the department that's going to be burdened by it. The only thing you can't do is have the entire board or commission start interacting through some email trail. I would say you keep it with the one or two persons that are reviewing it and drafting it, have them go to the budget committee, or at minimum the chair, discuss it with them and invite them to the next meeting.
It makes sense to you, Ed?
Makes perfect sense to me. Would you like me to share this with George Kroll and or ask for his opinion, or that we invite him to a future meeting, or however, I mean, whatever you prefer, Jack?
I mean, given the change, well, here's my thought. Given the changes in the financial functions that everyone here has really thought of and addressed and is taking a piece out of, I mean, these seem to be pretty straightforward. If George wouldn't mind coming to our next meeting, which is it the 16th in person, we probably have a handful of changes that he might, benefit from seeing. He had teed up possibly, the need for more time in the budget process. And, I think as I've visited with, a few of the town managers, that seems to be somewhat shared, by the time it's come together and it's got to go out to the electorate, it's got to be 10 days, got to be. So I think, if at the very least, if we sent this to him saying this is a change that, that started with the committee, this is what we're thinking about. We're going to kind of take a final pencil to it August 16th. If you're comfortable with it, no need to join, but we'd love to invite you. Any other thoughts?
Is there any chance we can get a copy of this that you have on the screen?
Sure, I did. Perhaps Michael as secretary could distribute it. Would that be appropriate, Carol? Or, I mean, so long as we don't discuss it, I don't have them.
Yeah, no, they can have it for their review. Yes, you cannot discuss it, but
Yeah.
outside of the meeting that you're posting, I have two computers going right now, so I'm just going to forward what you sent to everybody.
Oh, thank you. That'd be great.
And I'd submit, just because I'm old school, that, maybe it would be helpful before, we're not, because he's going to share with George and we'll have a chance to review it. And then, together, having thought about it, it seems to be pretty far down the road, but we'll have a chance to look at it, and then there'll be a final drafting of,
Yeah.
down the road. So you'll have another chance to comment on this.
Mhm. I would suggest, if George is not planning on coming back in person, just ask him to shoot you some sort of an email or something in writing, so you have it for your records that he's reviewed it.
Sure.
Any other comments for Ed?
No, it seemed very straightforward.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Ed. Very clear. So next up, we had Carol had sent us a couple of pages of notes. I think there were 6 or 7 potential areas for review. Monica, I don't know if you had a chance to visit with Carol or go through these, or have a point of view that you'd like to take us through.
Do you mean the proposed changes sent from Tony Texera?
No,
That
no,
one?
the ones from Carol in May.
Oh, well, let me see. I thought I had them in my notes. I'd have to look at that again. I don't know if I have them in my notes. I think I did. 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 I think I d I have, oh, May, just a minute.
We may have,
Okay, yes. So what she sent out, May 12th.
yes,
Yes, yes. And on that, can I comment on that? Can I comment on that?
yes, please.
I was going to be looking at section 204. And we had discussed other towns that had a similar charter, and my stepfather actually wrote the charter for Exeter. And although, so we are scheduled to meet. I don't have it prepared now because I've been out of the country for a couple weeks. So, but that's something I will be meeting with him, and he will be able to, I mean, he knows so much about all of this stuff that it would be very conducive for me to meet with him about section 204 that I specifically was looking to address to you folks.
Okay,
About the, how a town meeting and the times of the town meeting and when they have to close, et cetera, things like that.
yeah, okay. Well, I think our process, Monica, is if you would look at, through the 6 or 7 items that Carol mentioned, a handful of them were really clarifying roles that have changed. The town treasurer and tax collector is now an appointed position, not an elected. There's now a town finance director.
Right.
So we need to update that language and bring it up to speed. The second paragraph in this section should also be updated to reflect the hiring of a person.
Right.
So it's not may make a provision, they have made a provision.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
so if you could take a look at that so we can, section 605, I want to kind of get at, because Denise had mentioned that as well. Denise, there's now an appointed tax assessor, and Denise put together, I don't know if we got this out to everybody, it just came today.
I don't think I have anything from Denise on section 605. I don't see that.
Well, this is, we'll send this around to everyone. Denise, maybe you
Got it.
comment on
I
the
received-
changes.
I received it.
Oh. Huh,
Denise,
okay.
Denise, before you comment, I think it would have been helpful if you tell us what the language is now and what the revisions are in this memo. Maybe just walk us through that.
Yeah,
Okay. So basically, the language says there shall be a board of tax assessors of 3 members elected for 6 years, staggered terms with the term of 1 member expiring.
That's 606. We were talking about 605.
No, that's 605.
Oh.
The current language has a board of tax assessors,
Okay,
and there's no longer a board of tax assessors. I'm a single assessor.
so what Denise did was go right to her suggestion for the final language. Is that right, Denise?
Basically, yes.
which is 606, right?
No, 605.
Okay.
Well, there's both of them. I provided both of them.
605 and 606. So could you talk us through this, Denise? And then maybe if you could in follow-up, maybe as share what the language was before and how you've proposed, which is what you've sent here.
Right. So I looked at other communities too when I was looking at how we should change the language. But basically, there was a board of 3 with staggered terms, three tax assessors, with staggered terms of 2 years. And they were elected. So now my position is appointed.
Okay,
So basically, I just took the language out of being elected as and put it as appointed by the town council
okay.
with experience. And according to the state law and state and ordinances of the town.
Yeah,
And so- And so now the Board of Review, which is 606,
Okay,
is the prior Board of Assessors.
yeah. Is this new, 606, or just the word?
No. The 606 used to be the town council acting as the Board of Assessment Review.
The town council used to act? Okay,
Mhm.
And you want that change to say upon the appointment?
No, no,
No, I want that to say, there shall be a tax assessment board of review appointed by the town council.
okay, so appointed by or consisting of?
No,
Appointed by.
tax assessment board of review is not to be the town council any longer.
no. I just sent out to all of you what was originally sent by Denise. But then I had taken some time today and put on a sheet of paper for each of those sections, what is existing, what she suggested, and then the few things that I made comment on. That were just typo type things. So that is the second email that I just sent out to you. So you should have both of those.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
It's a little easier to look at what was existing when you're trying to consider what she's proposing for a change.
Right.
right. That's a good formula going forward. Okay, this is the,
I mean, for the most part, she's saying exactly the suggestions that both Bob and I had made on these sections already.
right,
You know, because there is no longer the 3-member elected Board of Assessors. There is no longer the town council sitting as the Board of Tax Review. So, you know, it's just bringing everything up to date to reflect what is in existence now.
yeah, that's very helpful, thank you.
so Carol, I'm reading this quickly. Denise, this is, and she'll be appointed, fill in procedure of filing for review of tax assessments, tax assessment authority for making of any adjustments. This is the full language of what Denise is saying with your edits.
Yeah, on each of those documents that you have attached there, I just sent it to you, Denise. The top portion is what is in existence now.
Mhm.
The next
got
one down is
I got you.
what Denise has suggested. And then
Okay.
the one below that is me just making a comment of, you know, correcting words or something like that. And neither one of them needed anything significant. I'm trying to think of which one now. One of them I was unsure on the second language.
May I ask, Denise, may I ask you a question? What is the appeals procedure from this as provided by state law? Is your recourse then just to go to Superior Court?
First they appeal to me, and then if they deny it, they go to the tax board of review, and if they deny it, it goes to Superior Court.
So would that seems to me, since this has been removed from the council, and again, these appointed positions trouble me because there is no direct connection between the voter, in this case, the taxpayer, and the board of review. Would an additional intermediate step, such as the council's review as part of that appeals procedure, be appropriate or considered before one has to go to Superior Court?
That's not how it's written with state law.
I understand that, but I also understand that it would not be at odds with state law.
It would be adding another layer.
It would be adding another layer. The council had served, provided this function. It would be adding another layer. It would not be inconsistent with state law. And it would allow the taxpayer to address the town council before they were forced to go to Superior Court.
I'm not sure the council would be in favor of that.
I don't know. I would be curious to get the council's opinion on it.
Yeah,
So are you suggesting, Ed, that would be, the town council would be the final review before?
No, well, before you
Superior
had,
Court.
yes, before you were forced to take it to Superior Court.
Okay.
Well, I would think the people, the population of Little Compton would like that. They like to be heard by the council.
yeah, I don't know. You'd have to ask to see what their feelings would be on it. And the only way you can do that is if you make up some sort of proposal and then submit it to them for their opinion.
Well, you're saying, Carol, that the whole review process that we're going through, that there could be an interim step there, or we just feel as a committee that, as it was before, the town council was part of the review process. And now that's been eliminated. It's sort of adding back the town council, whether they want to be in that position or not. And
We're
then,
just going to ask them. We just want to ask them.
Well, it's similar to what you're doing with the budget committee. You're coming up with some draft language and you're going to give it to them and say, would you give us your opinion before you take that next step of saying, yes, as a charter review commission, you want to propose this as an actual amendment to the charter. I think, or I know that the reason why the council was the Tax Assessed Board of Appeal before was because we had a 3-member elected Board of Assessors. So when that changed and we no longer had an elected Board of Assessors, and you came to the level of having a single tax assessor, it made sense to have the people that were in the know, who knew how to do the assessing and knew that process, to be that next board of review after the single assessor had denied something or had denied someone's appeal of her decision. I don't see myself personally how going back to the council really does give any extra benefit to the taxpayer, other than just one more place that they've got to go to. I mean, by the time they get to the tax board of review, they've been through the vision appraisal people, they've been through the tax assessor, and they've been through a full hearing at the board of review.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that you can trump state law by adding another layer of going to the council before you go to the Superior Court. If you did anything, it would have to be in between, I would think, in between the tax assessor and the Board of Review. Because once you do the Board of Review, the law is pretty clear that you go to Superior Court.
Right.
And
That's what I'm trying-
as
sorry.
I'm babbling here, I see Larry Anderson has his hand up, so I'm sure he has something that he would like to say to us.
Larry?
Can you hear me on this?
Yes.
So my concern would be, this is just my opinion, is that a step, first of all, I think Carol's right, that the first issue would be to look at whether this is consistent with state law, adding this extra layer. The other issue would be, I think you would be discouraging people from serving on this tax assessment board of review if they knew that they could be overruled by the council. The counterpart situation is the zoning board of review, an appointed board that has a hearing, has state standards it has to follow. If an applicant to the zoning board of review isn't happy, they go to Superior Court. The council can't overrule the zoning board. So I understand the concern, but I think that one of the things that happened when we went to a single assessor is I'm not sure that the former elected assessors wanted to serve in this capacity. So I think the council, in some senses, ended up with it by default. The original language suggested that they'd serve in this capacity, but the council ended up doing it. So anyway, I think this would discourage people from wanting to serve on the Tax Assessment Board of Review, the extra layer.
Denise, how often does something go to the Superior Court?
I've only had 3 so far,
And what time, this year or over the course, how many years?
14 years.
3 and 14 years. And Larry, the Board of Review, these are people that have evolved out of the assessment board, the elected assessment board, is that right?
Well, the current language of the charter was adopted at the time that it was adopted to go along with the charter proposal that allowed for the council by ordinance to make provision for the replacement of a tax board of assessors. And the idea was, as I recall, was that this was sort of I'll be honest, it was sort of a bone thrown at the elected assessors to say, well, look, we're going to fire you, but we'll give you a job as Tax Assessment Board of Review after you're fired. So my recollection is that not many of them were interested in that honor.
And this is a non-paid role?
Yeah. And the former Board of Assessors, it was a nominal amount, but they were, well, it was, the former elected assessors did receive a small but serious stipend, and they came to work. They took their job seriously. But the Tax Assessment Board of Review is volunteer, like the Zoning Board of Review, for instance, or like you guys.
And just so I'm clear, the zoning board is structured in the same way in terms of levels of review?
Well, the Zoning Board of Review functions under a pretty elaborate framework of state law. The procedures are very specific and legalistic. There are hearings, there are transcripts, and the Tax Assessment Board of Review, I'm not familiar with the state law, but I think the idea is that it is pretty rigorous. It requires a record and a justification that can be reviewed by the court. So I don't know the exact comparison between state law, but it is governed by state law. It's a quasi judicial proceeding.
Yes, it is. And both the Tax Board of Review and myself are both governed by state law, and we cannot skip over. We can't have the council come in between. To vision me, and if I say no, then it goes to the Board of Review, and if they say no, then it goes to the Superior Court. And then during Superior Court, if the judge says, come to some kind of, middle of the road ground, then the town council can say, yes, we want to go to the middle of the ground. We don't want to spend any more time. We don't want to spend any more money. And they make the decision at that time.
Well,
That, to my mind, is a counter argument to what Larry has just proposed. So I don't really, I don't see it, especially now, as being at odds with that procedure. But
You'd have to bring it to
my piece,
legislation.
I express my opinion or thought on the matter, and I can leave it there.
Anyone else have a comment on this? I was leaning your way, Ed, and after hearing Larry and Denise and the frequency, what are the terms of the Board of Review people? Are they sort of till?
I think one of the things that
There's
trouble.
6-year terms.
There's 6-year terms, but there are no qualifications that are required. So you don't have to be any sort of tax professional. You don't have to have any bona fides. You just have to be appointed by the council. So if this is a quasi judicial proceeding, you're talking about a board that is making findings of fact and perhaps findings of law, but they don't really, we haven't established that they have to have any sort of background in that matter at all.
The same is true of your zoning board.
Clearly, indeed it is. Clearly, the same would be true of the zoning board applies to people who are seeking zoning variances. The tax assessor applies to every taxpayer in Little Compton. So I think on some level they're distinguishable. The appeals procedure might be, but to the extent that this encompasses and affects every taxpayer in town, not just those who want to seek a variance, such as in the case of the zoning board of review, I think that it's distinguishable.
Well, with your thought process, make a suggestion that the tax assessment board of review appointees must have some background in
And the
appraisal.
difficulty
real
there is
estate,
trying to
you
come
know.
up with the appointees who do have it. I can appreciate why it is so broad and doesn't have those requirements. But what I'm saying is, if you're an appellate body and the next step is to Superior Court, and because the proposition of going to Superior Court is at least going to cost you $250 to file it, and that's assuming you're going to be pro se, that's a pretty daunting step for a lot of taxpayers. And they might be just taking the Board of Review's opinion, and perhaps because they don't have the financial wherewithal to be able to pursue it.
I like the
I
idea.
think it was a more equitable system when the council heard it, because at least then they were directly elected.
I like the suggestion that whoever makes up the assessment board of review have some delineated qualifications, but I like the fact that that's separate from the council. And I don't think it's that big, shouldn't be that difficult to have some requirements for qualification.
I think Larry would like to speak again.
I would, urge you to review the language of 606 as it exists. And this is a situation such as Ed described earlier, where the charter already delegates authority to the council. The procedures for filing requests for review of tax assessments, for the review process, and other matters pertaining to the duties of the board shall be determined by ordinance. So the council has it within its powers to set qualifications for this board. So I'm not sure that there's any change required. The existing ordinance allows for the appointment of a board with certain conditions. And frankly, the council is no more, the members of the council are perhaps no more qualified to make these decisions than other appointees who might be appointed because of their qualifications.
I agree. Yep.
Except that there's a difference in standing, Larry, and that the council is allowed to, by ordinance, establish standards doesn't mean that they have to establish standards any more stringent than these that are being proposed.
Well, I've offered it will be up to the council in the end to decide whether they want to serve in this capacity. So I think you should run it by them, as Carol suggests.
So why don't we do this? First of all, Denise, if you could kind of review what Carol sent around and make sure you're comfortable with that, and sort of the before and after of the language and the final cleaned up language. And then prior to our August 16th meeting, if the committee is amenable, I'll run it this notion by Bob Mushin, just to see what his reaction might be, and I'll report back on that at August 16th. And we can also think about, do we want to have different language that suggests, as language does throughout the charter, that maybe you want that Board of Appeals to have a certain set of, qualifications.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Sound like a plan?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so Denise, you'll send us back, take a look at this and send us sort of a final submission.
Sure.
Ed, you
Thank you.
comfortable with that?
Sure. Are we through with, or are we going to move on to 605? I don't want to belabor this, but I did have
Go ahead.
questions or points about 605.
Yep.
I didn't see your corrections, Carol. there is a during that needs to be struck. And in the final sentence, I think that or should be replaced by an and to read prescribed by the laws of the state and the ordinances of the town.
I'm a little lost. Are you looking at the,
I'm looking at 605.
what Carol sent out?
But I'm not trying to pick on you, Denise. I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
No harm.
I didn't have a chance to look at Carol's. I'm looking at Denise's draft.
Okay.
One question that I have, and because things can be changed by ordinance, the language that reads to serve under the general supervision of the town administrator is somewhat ambiguous if standing alone. It's clear in conjunction with the town code that, and let me find the town code, that the position is more strictly defined in the town code. But I wonder if perhaps because ordinances are subject to change and that in and of itself is somewhat ambiguous, that we should insert the language from the town code, which is section 2-2.5 C1. And it reads, the tax assessor works for the town council. The tax assessor reports on a regular basis to the town administrator and takes direction from the town administrator as defined in the tax assessor's contract.
That's not in either of these, Carol's or Denise's, is that right?
Pardon?
That language isn't in either of these, Denise's or Carol.
It is not in either. I would propose it as an addition, which would clarify the relationship between the town administrator and the tax assessor. Because again, if the ordinance were to change, if the council at its discretion, as it's entitled to do, decides that it wants to delete C1, then this language on its own is somewhat ambiguous. But adding that language from the town code in C1 makes plain what the relationship is.
Are you asking Denise to make that change, or are you going to draw that up?
Well, I can't. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I'm suggesting it to the Charter Review Commission. Just in reading Denise's draft and thinking about the draft, I understand what it says, but I'm just trying to make it plain. I think
I understand it, but I could not write your wording down very quickly.
Oh, that's okay. I certainly would be happy to do this at some future point. I don't need to do it now. I can have a copy for the next meeting. I'm proposing it because Denise is here, because we are meeting just to throw it out and see where it lands. The other suggestion that I would have is that that contract that is referred to in C1, that the charter require that the contract is available for review on the town's website.
What contract?
The contract between the town of Little Compton and the tax assessor.
This is sort of a job description contract or an employment contract. I'm not following.
I'm sure it's an employment contract. It reads, the tax assessor shall be given a contract of no less than 3 years, nor more than 5 years, which shall be renewable. Such contract will allow for the dismissal of the tax assessor for cause, but that contract is clearly a matter of public record, and it shouldn't require an APRA request to be able to get a copy of the contract. And so if the contract is available on the town's website, then everybody knows what the terms and conditions are for the tax assessor's employment, in addition to what's already enumerated in the town code.
Are all of the contracts for town employees on the website, Carol?
Not at the moment.
But they are a matter of public record.
Before I can comment on that, I'm going to have to go back and look at C1 2.2-2.5 C1 and review it in line with Denise's comments and Carol's revisions before I can really comment on that.
That's okay.
Okay, so I thought this was a fairly straightforward cleaning up of language. So why don't we start with that? And Denise, perhaps you and Carol can make sure you're very comfortable with how the current changes that you propose are going forward. And if there are any changes you want to make, you could send that to us. I'll talk to Bob Musham between now and the next meeting. And Ed, perhaps you can bring that language along. We'll be together and we can sort of parse it all out together. Does
Sure.
that make sense?
Happy to.
That I would comment on is that Ed's proposal, which I think is part of the spirit of what this charter review is really defining the role of the town administrator with who reports to him and who he and what those relationships are. So I think that incorporation would clarify where the tax assessor sat in means of report and review and direction.
Okay. And I didn't get the sections, Ed. Can you just review those again?
It's just the one section, and my suggestion would be that the charter incorporate the language of the present ordinance in section 2-2.5 C1 of the town code.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will, Denise, you'll make sure that we get a final thing. I think you've pretty much done it and Carol's done it, but just make sure you're comfortable with the changes, where it was, where it is now. And the two items I think are what Ed just mentioned. And would we want to have a review by the town council prior to going to Superior Court, sort of a third level of review. Is there anything else?
Well, while we have Denise here and Tony here, what could they comment on? Could they comment on that proposal of incorporating that the section 2.25? It's not, you don't have it in front of you, but in the spirit of that, do you have an opinion on that as a direction?
If I may.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We just got to be careful that, to detail too much in the charter and trim and tie the hands of the council for future ordinances. So you got to be very careful with that. I mean, the charter, and I've served in a couple rounds of that, not here in Little Compton, obviously. And you always have to be very careful because at some point, some of those things come back to bite you.
I do not disagree. I'm sorry, Monica, please.
I do think Denise's proposal seemed very reasonable. And even though I didn't disagree with what you were saying, Ed, in many ways, as far as getting the voters involved, it did seem like so many loops to go through that it ends up not a lot will get done. I just thought, I know Denise is going to re-propose it and do something a little bit different, but I thought what she was proposing seemed very reasonable.
I do not think that anything that we've looked at is in any way unreasonable, and I'm not suggesting that it is. As Tony points out,
sure.
There's an inherent tension between allowing the council administrative flexibility and administrative ease and not trying to tie their hands unnecessarily. But there's also the interests of the taxpayers and the voters. And so, it's kind of finding that balance between the two. And I'm not trying in any way to, with section 605, the insertion of the language, to my mind, would be because ordinances can change at the will of the council. If that section were to change in ordinance, the charter, the provision in the charter would become less clear. So my suggestion is that we make the provision in the charter clear, and it's not at odds with the ordinance. It merely incorporates what's the present ordinance. And I think that what the present ordinance is describes what the relationship is between the two. If you remove that ordinance, you remove that reference point, you lose the clarity that the ordinance lends to it.
Maybe the council should adopt an ordinance that includes that language rather than adding it to the charter.
They already have. That's the ordinance that I'm quoting.
Okay.
But I think adding that, if the council abolishes that ordinance, then it makes the charter opaque and it makes the charter ambiguous, this provision. What I'm suggesting is if we adopt the language of the present ordinance, it makes it perfectly clear in both the charter and the ordinance mirror each other.
Yeah, but they change the ordinance, then what happens in the charter? If they change that ordinance.
Well, if the town council, if they're going to change it, I don't know how it is that they're going to change it, but I think that if you're going to say that the tax assessor works for the town administrator, for example, rather than for the council, then that ought to be a matter of that should be calling a special election to change the charter, in my estimation. I think it shifts the power to, and if I would propose that if that were the case, and you're centralizing the power in the town administrator, then the charter ought to be changed so that the town administrator's position is elected.
Well, I think that one of the things going forward, not just today with Tony's memo, but defining the town administrator's responsibilities, duties, whose reports to him directly, what his power and authority is. I think it's a large part of what we're doing here.
Yes, and I think that this certainly is part of it. I don't think it's at odds with what Denise's language is. I just think it helps to flesh it out.
Well, just to add to this, I did seek advice from Department of Municipal Finance and their legal department, and that's how I came up with this. And they said less is best, and that the ordinances, will take over from this, like, we're talking about, and not to add that to it. So that's why I came up with this.
So it's not to add what to it, please?
Not to add the section that you're referring to, because I was looking at that. I was looking at what needed to be fixed with that and what needed to be included in that. And they said not to include that in that.
And what was their rationale?
Because they said that the ordinances are the action, the charter is the basis, and then the ordinances supplement that.
I understand that, but I also think, again, that it makes sense to give the council discretion where it makes their job easier. But in the case, if again, the way that this reads, to my mind, it reads in light of this one section of the town code, it means one thing. If that section of the town code is removed, it becomes completely ambiguous and unclear.
Okay, well, why don't we, none of us, or not many of us, have had the benefit of, going through that code. So I think obviously we all should read that, take a look at Denise's final thing, and when we're together on August 16th, prior to anything being adopted, we'll be able to arm wrestle with each other as to,
That sounds good.
Do we have enough there?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. So next up, so Tony, I suspect a bunch of us have not had a chance to go through your suggestions. And as Secretary Folcarelli suggested, you're sort of in the middle of a lot of these things. So I think, maybe what we do is ask you to take us through them now while we have a full quorum. And then possibly, as we've asked Denise, relative to the charter, if you could possibly go through these articles and come back to us with what does it say now and what are you proposing? And as we have with, Monica and Ed, I'm going to ask one of our, commission members to spend some time with you over the next month, just so we make sure we're clear about it when we come together on August 16th.
I'd like to do that.
Pardon?
I'd like to do that if that's possible. I've worked in the assessor's office for a while.
Okay.
Familiar with them.
You're You're the only volunteer, so you get the day. So Tony,
Okay.
tell us what you're thinking here, and I appreciate your time this evening. But we'd like to kind of dig in, make sure we have good background and understand specifically, where we are and what you would like clarified.
There's two of the items there that it's pretty much Bob already has covered those, and I'm in concurrence with Bob. And that would be Article 5, the financial procedures, to delete town treasurer and tax assessor since they are appointed positions. So
Yep.
that was already suggested by Bob. And the other item is also Bob touched on was Article 5, Section 505. What the wording that Bob has, I'm pretty agreeable to that, so I'll strike that out,
Okay.
suggestion there. So with that being said, going to Article 3, the first item, financial town meeting, and presently it reads in the second line, that the budget compiled by town officers and so forth. I would say the town officers to be replaced by town administrator, and Carol can jump in and add a little bit more if I'm interpreting town officers different. But that's basically the only change I would recommend there. Are you with me, Carol? That would be Article 3, Section 306.
Right. I don't see the need because you are a town officer.
Okay.
You are part of the town officers. So I don't see where there's a need to change that personally.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
except it's that specific position, administrator position, not any town officer position.
Well, what happens is all of the departments prepare their budgets and they submit them either directly to me if they're an elected office or to the council if there's jurisdiction with the council. And that's prepared by all of the town offices. So I would not want to see that it's removed completely, the word town officers, and only put with town administrator, because that takes everything and just puts the whole preparation of the budget in just the administrator's office. And there's many other layers. My office is still an elected office, so I prepare all of my budgets and those that go under the jurisdiction of the umbrella of my office, which would probate and Board of Canvassers and stuff. Then you've got the ones that report to the council directly.
Mm-hmm.
So I just personally think the word town officers does include the town administrator, but if you were to swap it out completely and just put administrator, that to me might cause a little bit of a problem.
So let me just so the chief of police, fire chief, they report directly to the town council?
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
they're one of the budgets that the town council has jurisdiction over.
and so how does it happen? So Tony, you work with them on their budgets?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
What I do, all the departments that answer directly to the council, I work with those department heads, compile the budget into a blue binder, and then I provide a very detailed budget along with the support from the department heads to the council.
But
So, in no way,
it funnels through you though, right?
please.
It funnels through you. It all funnels through you.
That's, I think, the point that I think we need. I hear what Carol's saying, and I'm not saying you should replace all of that. But with town officers, if you insert town administrator in departmental requests, so it's not just me, but also the department, the various departments would still be included.
Mhm.
If you replaced it with town administrator as opposed to town officer, town administrator is only exclusive to yourself, whereas town officer doesn't exclude, it's not limited.
Right.
So may I?
I think Carol's point is a strong one. saying it doesn't limit to the town administrator, but if you only have administrator, it then does exclude the officers.
Doesn't exclude them, it just brings them in before the administrator. The administrators are on top, and the officers come, the administrator is the final, finals to the administrator. So the budget.
Ed wants to say
So,
something.
but
I was just wondering whether or not it occurs to me, Tony, that perhaps your role in this process is as the one who compiles these things. And if it were to read in the budget as compiled by the town administrator from the town officers and departmental requests, would that satisfy your suggestion and clarify the role?
I think that would do it. That
Sounds
would be very encompassing. Yes.
Because that's essentially what happens. The council has assigned him the task of compiling everything. But again, the town officers and the departmental ones are created by themselves.
Right.
You know what, just FYI, I may have this, but in some discussions I've had with various of the big departments, the budget process is tight going to the financial town meeting.
Yeah.
And it's important, I think, for, that's one of the things I'd like to talk to George about, but it's important that in any organization, that the owners, if you will, of those budgets, get a chance to sort of present and defend. So the notion of compiling, doesn't eliminate that. And,
Right.
So I think that's a pretty good suggestion. Any other comments?
As the charter says, right, presently it has officer singular possessive. And if we're going to encompass multiple officers, we should make sure the punctuation is correct on that.
Okay. So Tony, moving on to
Go ahead.
Article 5, Section 503, that's one.
Yes, on that particular item, my comment is, since the town administrator prepares the budget along with the various departments, should he or she submit or provide to the town council and budget committee the budget? Right now, I know Carol has been doing this and she continues to do, obviously, when the budget committee has finalized their their review, they then sit with Carol to set up the warrant. But right now, it appears that it would go through Carol first, going to the council and the budget committees. But since I'm the one preparing the budgets, we've already discussed that. Should I be the one to submit that to those two bodies?
I would think so. Even though I just got your memo, an hour ago, I did some very quick research, and that's how it happens in Bristol, Tiverton, Richmond, Middletown, Portsmouth. That's how they do it. And I would think it would be town administrator would be the front person to interface with the council on the budget.
Tony, are you proposing that budget articles would no longer be given to the town clerk first for inclusion on the warrant?
No. That's not what I'm saying. It would be that, when I prepared the blue binder, that goes to the council for their review and the budget committee. Then eventually they have to come back to you to prepare the various articles for the warrant. No, I'm not. I don't want to interfere with that at all.
Well, I don't know that you need anything in here because you already do that preparation and present it before the council and the budget committee. Do you feel that needs to be in here? I mean, that's standard operating procedure as opposed to some form of procedural process that needs to be spelled out in the charter.
Sounds to me like it needs some clarification from Tony's viewpoint.
Right. I don't know that that's personally necessary, but that's just my own opinion. I mean, I'll just stop talking.
So how does it, can we, Carol, how does it happen now and how would this change things?
Well, what happens now is the warrant articles, if it's coming from a department, my department and those other few I mentioned that come under my umbrella, the school committee, the library, the beach commission, all of those come to the town clerk directly to be included on the warrant, which should not be confused with the budget committee report that mirrors the warrant. Two different documents, both supposed to be in the same order, but one is used for people to get a semblance of what's being requested and the other one is the legal document. So once that happens, the town council's articles that they have jurisdiction over, they take one full vote, at which time they actually vote the long written article words, not just the streamlined stuff you see in the budget committee report. And that also is submitted to the town clerk for inclusion on the warrant. In all of that process is where the administrator comes into play, and he gathers all of that information as well, compiles it into a binder so that both the budget committee and the council can have something in front of them that they can flip through the pages and see what was last year, what's being proposed next year, how much of an increase it is, and get a basic understanding of where they're standing at for a possible fiscal budget for the next year.
Tony, anything to add to that?
No, Carol, she hit it right on. I just thought in somewhere in there it should be included that the town administrator is part of the process in getting the budgets to the council as well as to the budget committee. And I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry, go ahead.
All the budgets, the budgets that Carol's responsible for and the other budgets, you're responsible for getting those all to the town council. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, just the one. Actually, I compiled the entire package. You are right in terms of that. However, we got to keep in mind as now as it stands, the council has preview over certain budgets, and obviously others go directly to the budget committee. However, what I've tried to do is compile all of that information from all of the departments and make that available to both bodies.
What he's doing now that he's in office is serving as another layer of administration where he gathers it for them. Before, they were given copies as they came into me. Each of the budget committee and the town council were given copies of everything that was being submitted. Whether they put that in their own binders and whether they made spreadsheets out of that, that was all on them unless they asked my office to do something. So Tony's serving a purpose of gathering this stuff together for them in a binder.
This is, Tony, this is addressed in the town code 2-2.43A. Budgetary, you coordinate development by department heads of annual proposed budget for town council consideration. So it's already that the process on your end is described as an ordinance.
Larry wants to talk again.
All right.
Well, the reason I had zoomed into your meeting tonight was partly because I had seen earlier that you might hear from the town moderator, Scott Morrison, who isn't here, but this was sort of the issue you're talking about is one I had wanted to address. I don't want to further complicate the discussion, but what both Carol and Tony have described is the product of the evolution of town offices and the procedures in recent years, and it's related to other things you've said that you've discussed tonight. Is that only when Tony was hired, which is now what, 2.5 years, I lost track of a year or two in here, Tony. Um,
No, you're right.
Did the council really act in a comprehensive way on the provision in Article 601A that says the council shall by ordinance define the responsibilities of the town administrator? And it goes on, his or her relationship to other officers. There's an echo of this in your discussion about the assessors. I haven't looked at this recently. When I've looked at every other charter in the state, Little Compton is the only municipality that has a town administrator or town manager which doesn't define the responsibility of the town administrator in its charter rather than by ordinance.
Right, that's what I saw.
Yeah, and so that by virtue of that and the fact that separate charter amendments have evolved separately, there is ambiguity in certain sections of our charter. And with regard to the budget, the areas where those get overlap and are not necessarily crystal clear, I believe, and I have served on the budget committee as moderator and on the town council, as well as on charter review commission. So I've seen this from different perspectives. But your Article 5, your budget procedures, and to some degree your Article 3 with regard to the town meeting, especially Section 3 or 4, notice and agenda for meetings, use different terms and procedures in ways that aren't clear, that don't quite jibe. We have practices that have worked. This is a situation where if it isn't broke, you don't have to fix it. Our town meeting works. I'm a diehard defender of town meeting, but the other body that's not represented here that appears throughout this is your elected but volunteer budget committee, so that all of these officials have overlapping roles, and what we're struggling to do is coordinate them in a way that everyone understands, and that it's not just based on past practice or ambiguity. So I won't go further than that tonight, except to say that what I was planning to present to you and is a proposed revision of Section 304, notice and agenda for meetings, which regards the warrant and the budget committee report and how that relates to your Article 502, 503, and 504. Because I think that what you're talking about is fundamental. I don't think we necessarily have to change a lot, but this very question of the chain of command and the sequence of events to get from the presentation of the proposal of budget items through the review to the town meeting, which has the final say, needs some clarification. And this would be a good, it's not easy because there's a lot of, we've been doing things a certain way for a long time, but I do think in particular the budget committee needs to participate in that conversation, because on the one hand, they're given the authority to present the budget to the financial town meeting. The administrator is now being asked to prepare it. The town treasurer, the town clerk is being asked to compile and prepare the warrant that is the basis for it. So I'm going on, but I think you're focusing on a very important thing, and I'm just giving you a warning. I'm going to take a stab at it for a future meeting.
Well, don't wait too long, Larry. That's a good suggestion. I think you clarified, how we've evolved from a structural standpoint. We've got, systems that have served the town well for a long time, but our purpose. So I would welcome your submission, and we'll figure out when we can invite you in. But you've got a lot of history around the dial. That would be helpful. And Michelle, I would encourage you to, ask Bob Mushin, his perspective.
I would, as we talk, I'm thinking about talking to Carol, Tony, Larry, Bob, and seeing what the flow chart looks like now. Where does it go? Who does what? and then, see if changes need to be made by ordinance or by charter, and just sort of not make it, I'm not gonna make any recommendations, but sort of write up kind of like what it seems to be now.
That sounds great. Hopefully for our next meeting,
Yeah.
August 16th, we'll all be together.
Yeah.
So Tony, got a couple of other comments here? Or on
Unmute.
601? On
Oh,
com-
yeah.
You're muted, Tony.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to, because my computer said to be updated 8 o'clock, so I might get knocked out, so.
Hopefully we'll finish by 8 o'clock. So, but these do kind of get at the sense of the major changes that Bob Mushin talked to me about early on, and, clarification for new roles that never existed before. So you got Article 6.
In Article 6, there is simply, if we go to, let's see.
I'll call you back. I'll call you back, okay?
Okay, and then where am I?
Half an hour, yep.
16. Okay, if we go to D17B, it says compensation and benefits for the town administrator shall be set by the financial town meeting. Currently, that's not how it's done. It's done through the president of the council. I'm not sure that should continue to be there.
Well, that's not entirely true, Tony. The president of the council develops those, but they are approved by the financial town meeting. And that's true.
Part of the budget approval, right?
It's part of that whole process. Your package
Right.
does not become in effect until after a financial town meeting approves that. So no, it's not just it can't just be set by the council president. It has to go before the financial town meeting.
Well, no, actually, it's negotiated by the president of the council, but then approved by the town council. But the way it states here is that all of that has to go before the town finance meeting. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Ultimately, the entire package has to be approved at the town finance meeting. However, the details of this, the benefits and compensation, I mean, it's negotiated by the president and approved by the council, not necessarily at the town finance meeting. I mean, that's just an observation on my part,
Well, I mean, if anything, it could be clarified that as negotiated by the town council and approved by the financial town meeting, which is how all of the contracts are. They're generally all negotiated through the town council or school committee, depending on what side of the fence you're on,
Yeah.
and then approved by the financial town meeting.
It seems clear.
Yeah, very clear. Doesn't seem necessary to change that.
And Tony, Article 6, 603, that's just a clarification of that role.
Exactly. That is correct.
On to the finance director and
Right.
and that language goes through, a lot of places. So
Correct.
we need to capture it where it does go. So Michelle, you've got and Tony and the folks you mentioned it's really an important part of what we're about. Larry, thank you for participating. Any thoughts you can share with us over the next little bit would be very helpful. We'll be together, I'm sure, at the August 16th meeting. We'll be together for a little longer than as we try to catch up on all of these things and finalize, a number of these things to get them into the rough format. Monica, you've got a handful of things with Carol too. A lot of them are clarifications, but voting at the town meeting and
Right, section 204.
Yeah.
Yes, section 204. And I'm sorry, it's probably been said, but where is the meeting actually going to be held?
You meet in the council chambers.
Thank you.
Oh, I like
Um,
Zoom.
So that is, I think, what we have. Do we, any other input, comments from any of the members? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I will second.
All in favor? Say goodnight.
Aye. Good night. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol, Tony, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Hey, Ed? I lost him.
Yeah, Ed's gone. He hit the end button very fast.